All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Aaron Blumberg, Swiftland's Continuing Education Coordinator, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Free Resources for Pictures and Graphics. We have a wonderful learning opportunity ready for you this morning with Diana Silvera. Diana is the president of Novari Library Services, a company that focuses helping libraries implement new technologies. In addition, she is a web designer and maintains websites for many small libraries and Swiftland. She presents regularly on implementing technology, best practices, and privacy issues online. She also works with libraries to deploy new technologies and develop new mobile and desktop websites. Please welcome Diana and enjoy her webinar this morning. Diana?
Hi, welcome. Before we get started, it looks like Ryan might be having some audio problems. Just to let you know there. He's done. So welcome everybody to Free Resources for Pictures and Graphics. My name is Diana Silvera, as Aaron said, and this is my favorite topic. I just love looking for free things on the internet, so this always works. I'm hoping today can be fairly interactive. I know there's a lot of us, but that chat box is so important. I want you to ask questions when you have questions and add comments, add some thoughts, anything you want to add, please do. The more you guys ask, the more we can learn together, and the more you'll find this webinar useful for you. So we have a busy agenda today. We'll just kind of go over the sort of frame of today's work. We're going to start with talking about some copyright issues and sort of what we're going to look for as we look for images. Then how to find images, videos, how to take your own photographs a little bit better than maybe you have been, finding graphics online, how to do some editing online, and then how to get into some custom visual marketing, creating free videos, and kind of how to bring all of that together to the next level. Like, so you get this picture and you get this video, what do we do with it? And then some overall best practices to make all of this effective. So we're going to talk about free images first, and this really goes through videos, graphics, everything that we're going to talk about right now. This is the attribution or the copyright for images. And I love Google as much as the next person, but it's one thing that drives me nuts on Google is when you do an image search, you can say like, I want copyright free images, and they're not really copyright free. It's not that great. So one of the things you want to do when you're evaluating a site for free images is to stop and look at what the attributions, the copyright are before you go through there. So these are two examples, and we're going to look at these sites later today, but this is Flaticon and Pexels. So we're going to look at the two of them, and this is what they say. Flaticon, if you're going to use their icons, you actually have to make a little attribution for them. Pexels, on the other hand, says do what you please with the images, and that's really what you're looking for, that do what you please. That makes so much easier to work with, to not be worried about it, but you want to make sure it's a legit site that's telling you that, because there are some shady sites that maybe say go ahead and do what you want, but they're stealing images from other places. So we're going to look at good sites today, and just kind of keep in mind that you want to make sure you're following any of the copyright rules that are out there. One of the things you'll see, and with Flaticon is a good example. Flaticon, you have to do an attribution. We actually have one on Swiftland's page in the About Us section for it. But if you buy their pro version, which is not expensive if you're going to be doing it a lot, you don't have to do that attribution. So you can kind of weigh that in what you're doing if it's worth a little bit of money for that kind of stuff. So here are some of the things that you are going to run into and see what you're going to use. Most of these are fine for libraries. The ones that I would really look at, and it depends on what you're doing. Again, if you're doing a billboard on I-75, I would really look at commercial use only. But if we're making a flyer within our library, we can probably be a little more relaxed. Personal use, I would avoid. Personal use, you'll see that a lot with fonts, and we'll talk about fonts a little bit later. But you want to avoid that. That's something like a crafter can use for their own wedding invitations or something like that. It kind of gets icky if you're using those for library purposes, even though we're sort of nonprofits. So commercial use, always the best. Attribution means that you just have to give them credit for it, and you can go through there. And Creative Commons has a great explanation if you really are unsure if something. And I always, with copyright, edge on the side of caution. If I feel like it's not maybe right, I probably would skip it. Does anybody have any questions about distribution rights, attributions, and things like that before we get into the fun stuff? I see someone typing, so we'll just take a second. Nope, okay. So the next thing you're going to look at when you look at images is the size and the format. What kind of image do you want? So when you're looking at size, we'll get a little more into size later as well, but think about your format. You'll look at images and they'll say they're 200 by 300 pixels. 200 by 300 pixels is probably about the size of your fist. So if that image works for you, if you're sharing it on social media, that's probably fine. But if you're printing out an ad for your library, you're doing a flyer, that's not going to fly. It's going to end up all sort of discombobulated. On the flip side, with size, so you always say, well, I'll get the biggest size possible. You want to make sure it's not too big, especially with websites. If you have like 11 megabyte pictures, 15 megabyte pictures, which are the ones that you would take with your on high resolution on your camera, they can actually cause some issues with your site loading. Not so much in social media. So you just kind of want to pay attention to that. The next thing you want to look at, you'll see JPEG, GIFs, and PNGs. And you'll see those all through the internet, and you think, well, which one do I want to use? GIFs are simple animations. They're flat colors. They resize easily, but you mostly see GIFs for animated GIFs and for icons. PNG and JPEGs are what you commonly see for images. JPEGs, they don't scale really well. You can't really size them up. You can size them down easily, but you can't size them up. But they're perfectly acceptable, and they're great to use. A PNG is going to be, especially, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, if you want something transparent. A PNG can do transparency, while a JPEG is going to make it white in the background. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. Thanks, Alice. I love when someone tells me to keep moving. All right. So let's get into the fun stuff. So here's a couple sites that I love for free images. The first one is Pixabay. Pixabay, this is what it looks like. It's got a partnership with Shutterstock. So you want to pay attention to make sure you don't actually oh good, Brenda uses Pixabay. You don't want to accidentally end up on Shutterstock over here. You can see over here, they kind of, and sometimes when you search, it kind of comes up a little confusing, and you have to make sure. What I like about them, of course, is that Creative Commons license. You can do whatever you want. I don't have to worry about it. They're fairly professional-looking photos. You do sometimes have to sort through some images, but otherwise, it's good. Kelly's asking if you have an option, which should you save an image as? That's a great question. I usually go for PNG if I have the option, because it's a little more flexible than the JPEG, but it won't hurt you either way too much. Alicia is saying Pixabay is great. It has larger size photos and vectors. Yep, and we'll talk about the vectors and actually some video later that they have. So when you do the download, if you log in, you can just, you create an account. They don't really bother you much. You click the free download. It will ask you what size of an image you want. So if you know you're just doing a social media, you can save a quick little one. If you know it's going to be a print ad, you can download a large sized image. The next one is Pexels, and it works very similar to these. We're going to not worry too much about the search sort of capability because they're kind of very similar. You can see again that free download, that free licensing over here, free for personal and commercial use. You do, with Pexels, have to be a little more careful because some photographers are a little more things. All of these sites can try and get you to donate to pay. I do a like, unless I was doing something huge. And then you can see, again, sponsored photos down here. And there's a search. And all of these have a browse and a search. So I can put in women with computer, or I can browse people, and then I can browse technology, and I can kind of scroll down into it. I would say the indexing on all of these sites is not the most fantastic, so sometimes you have to do different searches to find what you're looking for. And the other thing, these sites I think are fairly high quality. Some of the other ones we're going to talk about, you kind of have to go through a little bit more because there are, as you guys know, some really horrible stock images out there in this world. So Morguefile is interesting. Morguefile, the photos are much more amateur. I will say that right up. They're not the same level as Pixel and Pixabay, but one of the things that I love about this site is let me pull this over here. I'm circling with my mouse like you can see. I can request an image. So I search library and I go through and I go, not really. I can put it out there to the open source community. I need a storytime picture, or I need a picture of children's books, or a children's, or people studying in a carousel. And you can get some response from that. So it's a really great way to request an image if you are not finding the image that you're looking for. Now, again, this is not like I have to have this flyer done in an hour. I need an image immediately. But if you know you're working on something and you're just struggling to find it, this is a really cool idea on how to do that. I see Brenda's typing, so I'm just going to pause for a second to let her type. Oh, she's having sound issues, Erin. So the next one is Unsplash. And I promise we'll just get away from kind of listing stuff. Unsplash is a much smaller collection, and it's much more artsy. They're beautiful photographs, but it's not as deep of an archive as the others. So you might not find exactly what you're looking for in there. So, but again, download. They do have, they would like attribution, but they basically say do what you will with your pictures. This is called Unsplash. And I should mention that all of the pictures will be available on the slides. I will send you a link at the end of the presentation so you can download this entire presentation and use it as you find beneficial for you. And I believe that archive will be available as well. I'm pausing for questions here. I see stuff coming in. All right. So this is Unsplash. Again, really beautiful pictures. Maybe not so oriented towards libraries, but if you're doing programming, you know that there's a program for everything. I'm sorry, things are beeping and I don't know why. Yeah, I know that. Kristen, I don't know if you could tell I was hungry when I was putting the slideshow together. It's not really good for helping that because everything is food today. Alicia's saying it's just a comment. She's glad that I made a mention that the Google image search is unreliable for finding copyright-free imagery. And I can't tell you how much that I work with not just libraries, but I do have some private clients as well. And I find this is my librarian foot that I always put my foot down when they send me an image and they say, well, I found it on Google and they said I can use it. And I'm like, no. Let me explain copyright to you. And so I think it's a really good teaching point when we work with our users. So again, ISO, really beautiful photos. Again, related images, not quite as depth, but really high quality images that you can use, and that creative license is available. And Kaboom pictures. Now, Kaboom, again, doesn't have, it sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but one of the neat things about Kaboom is this search. First of all, orientation, which some of them have, some of them don't, because sometimes you're looking, you need a vertical picture for a space. You need vertical picture, a horizontal picture. You just know that you need that. Do you want it to be a photo shoot? Do you want it formal? And lastly, and I think this is really unique and this is important, is color. Are you trying to get something out? Do you know that the rest of where this image is going to go has a certain look? For example, your website or even flyers, and you know that you want something that's really bold, or you know that you want something that's going to stand out. You can actually find color, search by colors, and it's going to bring stuff out that has those colors in it. So you can I'm going to move my mic to see if that helps with some of the volume issues. If you you're going to want to do this, and if you're doing a series, sometimes you want the pictures to look similar. So this can be really powerful and really help you out. You know that you want to have the blue that's in the logo for your library's logo into the thing. So you want to pull that out. So let's see. And then, of course, the last thing I wanted to point out is there's just a trove of historical photos online. Digital collections from the New York Public Library is huge. Of course, Florida Memory, you can't, and especially if you're looking at all of Florida, and just amazing photos. I have a problem with these sites because I get lost for like hours, and I'm sure you guys do too. And the Library of Congress, I'm really sorry for this beeping. I don't know how to turn off a feature on my computer that seemingly one of beeps. Any questions about just photos and places to go? I'm going to talk about video for a few minutes, as video is starting to kind of take hold in social media. More and more, you're going to want to use videos as a background. Sorry, maybe that will stop them. I apologize for that again. So free videos. Pixabay, which we talked about for photos, actually has a huge archive of small little HD videos. And we're going to talk about how to make animated GIFs later. But more and more you're seeing these videos in backgrounds on websites. You can use them for all sorts of purposes. And they're very generic looking. They're the sun rising and things like that. If you press play on my butterfly, you'll actually see it flap around a little bit on your screen. I see Sarah's typing, so I'm going to give her a second. Unfortunately, with Adobe Connect, the videos don't play automatically for you. Sarah's mentioning the National Gallery of Art has a lot of images in the public domain, and the historical images reminded her of that. Thank you, Sarah. What I'm going to do in a few minutes, I'll ask you for some additional resources, and I'll add a slide into the slide of things that you guys share so that you'll capture those as well and you don't lose those. Because I'm sure some of you were saying some other things as well. And again, Pixels, very great, simple videos that you can just use as background. You can use just to catch eyes, especially on social media. And this is what the search looks like. You're going to look for high quality. You cannot resize a video. It doesn't stretch. It doesn't do things like that. So you need to be careful about what size you're using, how you're using it, and what you're planning on doing with it. Again, with social media, it doesn't matter so much because things are really condensed. But if you start talking about websites and responsive things, video gets a little more complex. It's kind of out of the scope for this class. But for social media, they're really a great way. As you know, when you're scrolling through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, nothing stops you faster than a video. So I'm not a photographer, but these are some really basic tips if you are going to edge in and start taking your own, because those are going to be more effective than anything that you can get in sort of stock photography. The first thing, I can't stress this enough, and this is really, as an introverted librarian, this can be really difficult for me, is get close. I was the queen of standing in the back of the room and taking pictures of a program. So what everybody would get from my program, photos is 45 heads that nobody can see who they are and a little tiny microscopic speaker in the front. What does that do? That doesn't really make it look enticing. What you want to do, you don't really need to capture, you can focus and take a whole group shot, but you want to be in the front so you can get everyone's faces, but get in close and get some of those darling faces of kids or adults, anything like that. Of course, mind the policies of your library on what the photography rules are, but you know, there's always workarounds. If you're not allowed to take pictures of kids or users at your library, I know one library that uses a stuffed animal and they put it in different programs and they can move it around. So you can do something like that where you have a mascot. Or you can always use staff photos or use the presenter and avoid using the pictures of the crowd. But again, get close. It's okay. People understand you're taking a picture. You don't want to be in front the whole time, but get close. And that goes along with the second point, is to plan. I know that Mary is doing a cooking class in my library, and I want to take pictures for social media. What pictures do I want? Well, Mary's making brownies. So I want a good picture of her mixing the brownies. I want a good picture of the attendees coming up and eating the brownies. I want a good picture of the brownies themselves. All of that kind of stuff. I want to go ahead and make sure that I'm up close and personal and that I know the pictures, because there's nothing worse than when you get out of the program, you're uploading the pictures 20 minutes later and you go, oh, I forgot the picture of the presenter. I forgot this picture. If you think about just, you know, when you talk to a photographer for a wedding or something like that, what's the first question they ask you? What photos do you want? And you kind of list out those things. So if you think through them and you plan them, you're able to capture much more important images that are going to be more impactful than just generally snapping a couple pictures from the back of the room. And the last is watch your lighting. I can see Adobe messed up my picture. There is so much on lighting, and we're not really going to get into lighting too much because you could have a whole presentation on lighting. But beware of shadows. You want to make sure, unless you're really going for an artsy photo where people are sort of in the shadows, you want to make sure there's not a shadow on them or half on them or something like that. Indirect and diffuse lighting, which is like if you think about the sun or a cloudy day, make very different photos. So think about where people are standing, what sun is on them, what lights from overhead are on them, are they standing in front of the projector, those kind of things. And if necessary, move or ask the person to turn around. It's not that much and it will save you your photo. You might be able to edit some of this stuff out, you might not be. If the lighting is bad, if it's just not a good situation for lights, you don't have a lot of control in it, focus on small details so you can get really close to those images. Maybe Mary's brownie program, the lighting is horrible for some reason. Maybe I just really focus on taking a really couple good shots of the brownies then and things like that. Does that make sense? Does anybody else have, any of you photographers have any tips that you would want to pass off to a newbie? And I'm sorry you're still having audio issues. Discuss backlighting. Okay, Margaret, I'm going to try. I'm not the best photographer, but a backlight is when the sun is coming from behind you or the light is behind you. And what happens is it's really bright and I can't see you. So you want to move. Typically when that happens, the best thing to do is ask to switch places with the person you're taking the photo of. Maybe you can't see them in the box in your display on your camera, but the picture will be a lot better. And again, some of these techniques, backlighting, shadowing, can be utilized effectively if you are a good photographer. I am not a good photographer. I'm a shoot and point kind of person. And Katarzyna is saying, I hope I said your name right, is saying quantity. Take a lot of pictures. That's a really good point. And then you can dispose of most of them. And the key is to dispose of most of them. Go through them and look and find what are the 5 best pictures from this program. I probably don't need 300 of Mary cooking brownies. I'm really going to have brownies after this session. But I probably don't need 500, but if I take 500 pictures, I can scroll through them and find the best of those. Margaret is saying sidelining is best if you were looking for clear facial images, and that's really a good point. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to just pause as Margaret types one more thought there. And avoid straight lines of people. And there are a lot of, and create different heights. All really good tips. There's a lot of good tips on how to take images. And there's also guides when you start cropping. The straight lines made me think of this, about where to crop on people so it doesn't look bizarrely cropped. So you want to kind of look through that. You don't want people's foreheads cut. You want to create different heights. You want to have different distances in there. So it's important to do. And I am a firm believer in also making sure people are comfortable with a photo. I'm not going to post a photo on any social media that someone doesn't like. So often if I take a picture of somebody at a program, I go, hey, what do you think? And they'll say, oh yeah, that's okay, share that. Or, ooh, that's awful of me. As someone who doesn't always like to be photographed, I appreciate that. So, be respectful, be nice. And there are so many great tutorials, and Margaret sounds like she actually is probably a really good photographer. So just another tip here coming in, so I'm just going to pause for a second. And I would say, you can take improv pictures when people aren't paying attention, but a lot of times the best pictures are really the pictures when you say smile to a person and they look up at you and they make eye contact with the camera, or maybe from the side or something like that, but that they know they're being photographed. Zania, I'm so sorry I'm slaughtering your name. Zania is saying, what's the subject of your photo? Know it and know what the story does it tell. Kasha, okay, I will, thank you. Okay, so moving past just photos, we also want to look at, oh my gosh, what just happened? I hit the wrong button. I'm going to hope the top one is the right one. I am sorry. Hold on for just a second. There we go. Finding graphics. So the first thing with graphics is looking. I find icons are just a great way if you're not really sure what image, and sometimes there's just not a good photo. And bad stock photos are a horrible thing to use for anything. So sometimes an icon might be the way to go. It's just basic. It's easy. Flat Icon is one of my favorite sites for icons. I actually went ahead and paid for their annual fee so I don't have to attribute anymore because I use them so much. But basically, you put in Rocket in this top. It will show you hundreds of Rocket icons that you can use, vectors and things like that. They have an edit, so you can change colors. You can see right here, you can download it into different formats. That PNG is here that we talked about. SVG we didn't really get into, but that's you can scale it forever. It's a really powerful image, but it's not quite mainstream yet, so sometimes you might have trouble utilizing that in some other formats if you're going to open it. EPS is for Illustrator, and PSD is if you're going to use Photoshop, and then you can also just embed it straight into your website. Most image icons come in packs, so I can have a pack of similarly themed images that work together. Again, you see these on the Swiftland website, and they're very easy to use. They're really easy to resize. Always fun to use. So this is what you can actually create a pattern with them. You can do a whole mess of stuff. And if you use the free version, all you have to do is have an attribution somewhere on your site. Moving past that, you might want to look into, and I don't have a slide for it, but we mentioned Pixabay also has vectors, so you might want to look at that as well. Infographics are an extremely powerful way to share something. If you are doing your annual report, you're putting out data, you want some sort of graphic, this is the way to go. These three sites have the same kind of options. They all have slightly different, but they're all really good and free. They have ones that are already created, like this one I didn't do. Is it okay to use someone else's creative work? Great, I don't have to do any work. I can just download it. I can also take this and I can change it. So maybe I just don't agree or I want to change this to my URL. I can go ahead and do that. Or I can take a template and create my own without having to do a huge amount of graphic work. I can kind of click and choose and put things in there. So it's a fun, easy way to create a visualization of your information. And moving forward with that, visualizing your data can go even further. These are three sites that will let you take your data, like Google has for, if you use Google Analytics, you can actually use this and you can see the whole, how your website, people move throughout it using data points and graphics. Zoho Reports and DataViz Catalog will actually take any kind of data and create hundreds of different charts with them. So they kind of move past the basic PowerPoint and Word charts and create highly visible graphics. So I just want to mention a couple other sites before we move forward. And at this point, if you want to type in sites, I'll grab them at the end of the session, and I can also share them with anybody else. So if you are interested in your own fonts, Font Squirrel is a fantastic free. A lot of them are commercial use. You do have to kind of watch, but a lot of the font places have personal use, so you want to really be careful with that. But Font Squirrel, you go, you download, you install the font on your computer, and you're able to just have a new font. That's a little bit different maybe than basic fonts that come with your computer. Creative Market is a hugely powerful, and they do charge, but if you sign up, every Monday they send you 6 creatives, usually a font, some stock photos, and some templates. So I would say 2 out of 4 weeks I download the font that they've offered because it's something fairly unique. And it's usually for commercial rights. Yes, a couple other thoughts about fonts. Brenda's saying Google Docs offers different fonts too. Yes, Google Fonts, there's a huge amount in there that you can utilize. And then Amy's saying be careful using rare fonts in presentations. Anytime you will be moving your presentation to another computer, whether it's a Word document, a PowerPoint, anything like that, you need to be careful with your font. We'll talk about fonts in a minute a little bit more. Ellis, it happened to me last night. I have to say that's one of those lessons I learned the hard way repeatedly. In fact, this slideshow, Adobe changed my font slightly. Not hugely, it wasn't anything wild, but it did change the font. Another visual data is Creative Blog. Some more photo places, because there's only so many times I can say, there's this great photo. These are not quite as robust. They're not my favorites compared to the others, but they're good sites. I did want to mention Storyblocks. They often have sales, and I actually subscribe to them. It's $99 a year, unlimited stock photos, and it's kind of a slightly higher Pixabay. So it's a good go-to place and they do have some video as well. And freestockphotos.org has video. So some great additional sites to check out. If anyone has, we'll just pause for a second and let people type in because everyone has another site. Sarah recommended something earlier. Brenda's saying she loves Death to Stock Photo. Sarah, I went back and forth with Death to Stock Photo if I should have it in there because I do like it. I see lots of typing, so I'm just going to give everyone a second to type. And I do always encourage you to spend some time looking for stock photos. Never underestimate how much time you'll spend looking at horrible stock photos with all of these sites. Brenda's saying the models are a little funky and they include minorities. And Brenda, actually, that's a really good point because there is a huge bias with stock photos with a lack of minorities. And sometimes a lack of women, or women, especially with technology, they're doing like, they don't know how to use their cell phone pictures and stuff like that. So it's important to try, and sometimes it takes a little more diligence and a little more hard work to find those images of women with technology, minorities doing stuff, because the photos are overwhelmingly white in a lot of these places. Margaret's adding, she's a retired school media specialist from North Carolina. I often go to NC Wise Owl, oh, I forgot about that site, which is a database for NC students. I'm not sure what kind of access Florida people will have, but I've been able to continue using the copyright information, copyright-free images. So we'll definitely check that out afterwards to make sure it works. But and Brenda's saying that's why sometimes you use pics from your own hands or of my own hands or pics. And I completely agree. And I think sometimes taking your pictures of our users can be more powerful in that way too. I'm always striving for diversity in photos a lot of times, and sometimes I can spend 20, 30 minutes saying, find me a good photo of, you know, a Latin woman using a computer that doesn't look like she doesn't know what she's doing. That, you know, and so it can be difficult. So she's saying not only herself, but not others. And so you do need to be careful and make sure people are comfortable with having photos taken. So how do you edit these photos and use them for library marketing now that we have these great photos? The first site I want to show you is Giphy. Giphy is what you can make animated GIFs from, or memes. So what you can do, again, the cat, it's not like the most exciting thing, but if you hit play on the cat will have some action, a little bit of action for you. These are very short videos, and they're used on the internet to kind of cause reactions. You see them all the time. People will post, you know, I don't know, there's no more brownies. That was what you would get that look from me from today. But, and people will post that kind of picture as a reaction. So Giphy has a huge archive of these photos, but you can create your own in Giphy, and that's one of the things that I like about it. I think most of us just use it in Facebook Messenger and things like that to send animated GIFs. Yeah, I know, right? Because everyone needs a flying pig in the background. It's like a hidden Easter egg back there. All right, so how do you make a picture? And this is extremely powerful, and it just always amazes me what's available just at our fingertips for free these days. So you can just go over this really slowly. You can choose a photo, and that's just a standard thing, or an animated GIF that's already existing, or a video. So maybe it's that video, a video that we downloaded from one of those sites earlier. Or you can go to any URL, including YouTube, and you just put in the URL for the site. So I have done this with YouTube videos, and it's amazing. Today we're going to use just a video that I downloaded off of Pixels. So what you can do next, because you don't want a 5-minute video, is trim the video. So I can say I want it to be 4 seconds long. An animated GIF should not be very long. It should be 4 to 6 seconds at the most. It's something that's going to loop around and around. But you can, if you're using it for other purposes, you can make it a little longer. And then you can change the start time. So maybe you don't want it to be the beginning of the video. For example, I took a video. This is not the video of this. This is somebody cutting lettuce. But I took a video of the ride at Universal Jaws. And the video is somebody took the whole ride from the moment they got on. Well, I didn't really want that. So what I did was I moved the start time from the YouTube video all the way up to when the shark jumped out of the water. Said it was 4 seconds. And that's the loop that I created. It's just the shark jumping out of the water. So this is just my little lettuce here being cut. We're going to move to the next slide here. And then I can add stuff to it. I can add fonts. I can write stuff on it. I'm not moving that thing. So I can add words. So I can put what I want for the program there. I can say what kind of style I want it to look. and what kind of animation. So I can have it, maybe it's a computer program, so I want it to look pixely, which is sort of a computer game font. And then I want it to sparkle, because I like sparkles. So I can have the pixels font, or I can turn it into a rainbow. I can mix this around. I can change the colors. I can add stickers to it, filters. I can draw on it, but I'm not a preteen, so I probably wouldn't do that, but you can do that if you want. And then, just like that, this isn't really cooking here, but you can see I put Cook with Diana and sparkly font, just changing the words. And then I hit upload down here on the bottom right. Now once you hit upload, you get a bunch of options. It creates your GIF just like that. You can see it takes, and this video, I literally created this in less than 5 minutes. So you can think about if you really spent some time thinking about what you want in the background. So my Cook with Diana is here. I can get the source video and I can download it. So then I can do whatever I please with it. If I just want to share it on social media, I can grab this link and post it in my social media and move on. If I want it really small for the purpose that I'm using, I can do that here. I can also just create links back to this video itself, and I can just share it right now on social media here. And this would be a video that I have created, an animated GIF, and that took no longer than creating a flyer. It probably took less time than creating a flyer. And it's probably going to catch more eyes on social media than my basic flyer would. Of course, the animated GIF is not going to work because you can't hang it in the library, but it's a really effective way to share on social media. Does anybody have any questions about Giphy? Giphy. I'll say it every way we can today. You can extract the still video. Can you? Yes, if you make it really short, you can just go ahead and do that. I believe so. Let me go back here. You can make an animated GIF. I'm not sure if it will actually be a still video from it, but you might be able to. At most, you could pause it and take a screenshot. So that's a service that can do that. If you're just doing an image, you can actually create a meme or a graphic picture using just PowerPoint, or Google Slides will do the same thing. I find it a little more awkward in Google Slides, but you can, if you're comfortable in there, you can use it there as well. The same instructions. So the first thing you would want to do is actually create a custom slide format. You can create a different size, so it's maybe a little bit different. It doesn't look like a PowerPoint, and you can edit the photo and bring in. So you bring in the photo that you downloaded. I can change its look. It actually has a lot of editing tools built into it now. It used to be that a lot of the stuff was in Publisher and you kind of had to go back and forth, but they've sort of merged everything in so that you can do most stuff within PowerPoint now. We're going to talk about layering in a little bit, but this bring forward, bring backwards is a basic layering format where you can put things on top of each other. So I can have this, and then I can bring in an icon or a sticker and put it over there, over the baby's shoulder. I can add a caption over her shoulder. I can do all sorts of stuff like that. You can create a background image, which you can resize the image to be the full background, or you can create a background image straight out. And then you can add an overlay. An overlay is important because it makes your words pop. You guys have probably seen them and not known what they, if you didn't know the word for it, but an overlay is basically a text, the box that the text is in with a slight color. And that color can be grabbed from one of the other images. It can be it's usually fairly transparent, but the idea is that without this box, those words would get lost. So you want to be able to see the words. And so you would pull those out there. Does that make sense to everybody? I know I went kind of quick through there, but I just wanted to show you, you don't really need fancy software to do any of this stuff. You're able to create any of this if you can do animated stuff in PowerPoint, but basic photo stuff, you can do a lot straight into PowerPoint or without a lot of technical skills. A couple things to mention though when you're adding an image. Let me see. I don't think you can see it so well in here. Let me mark right here. You want to make sure this box, especially if you're in a JPEG, is checked. What this will do when you're reshaping your images is keep the original dimensions. This will avoid the baby getting really long and skinny or really short and fat because I pulled the image out wide. Personally, I like to make things long and skinny when I'm in them, but realistically, you want to keep things in a human perspective. So if you keep that checked, that will do that for you automatically, and you don't have to really worry about it. It will keep that the dimensions the same. Does anybody have any questions about Giphy or PowerPoint? I see Nikki's typing her questions, so we'll just wait just a second. And if anyone else has a question, it's a great time to ask. Inside the cropped, I wish I could bring it out a little bit more for you, but it's really hard. Right here under, you go to picture format, which is where you would change the dimensions and stuff. And over here is the height and width, and there's a little constrained proportions is what it's called, and it will keep it for you set properly constrained so that the dimensions won't change. So there are, okay, great, Nikki. I see Ryan's typing, so we're just gonna give him a second to put in his question. Yep, that is exactly where we're moving next to, Ryan. You read my mind. So the first one I love is Pixlr. Pixlr Express has a huge amount of options that are free. For editing your photo. So I'm just going to pull this out here and show you a couple things here. You add an image, so I can actually layer, which is what we were talking about earlier. I can airbrush, I can move things around, I can change sort of the focal point of the image. This one is pretty defined. You can see they blurred out the bowl and it's all about the cat's face. You can crop, you can take out spots, you can change the coloring of the image. That means like make it more earth tones, more reds, and it gives it a different effect. If you think about what this photo might look like if you really made it black and white and stark versus really blues and things like that, you could see that. And that's what that overlays does. And then there's the colors here, and then the vibrance. If your photo, we talked about lighting before, and sometimes this will not save your photo, but if your photo is a little dark, you might put some vibrance in there, and that kind of lightens up the image. I'm not saying that's going to save every image, because it won't. Some images are just, they're not going to look good. They're going to look washed out when you add too much light to it. But, or you can darken an image. Maybe it's a little too bright. Sheila is typing. So we'll let her kind of give a response here. And brighten, again, it's sort of like that vibrance, and it will bring out the picture. And heal, we'll talk about heal in a second. Yep, you can bring in any photo into this. This is actually a photo from Pexels, I think, that I brought in, and I added words to it. So you can bring in any photo download into it, and then you can download it onto your computer and use it as you please. Pexler does have ads, and that's how they sort of pay for themselves. Photo is the next one, and this has some, you get into some pro versions here, but it's simple to use. I mean, really where these are different are going to be your preference, and those are my two favorite. I think this has a much cleaner interface for me personally, but the other one has more options. So if you're just doing basic stuff, this might actually work in a little bit better. Crop, rotate, basic colorings and things like that, fine-tuning your picture a little bit, making it lighter or darker. All of this stuff, when you do these photo editors, you can try it and then you can undo it. So you can say like, brighten it, ooh, not so good, and then darken it back out a little bit. Add text to them, save them to the cloud, or save them down to your computer when you're finished. If you are looking for more robust, and you can download on your work computer, GIMP is a Photoshop alternative. It's open source. You can do almost, I would say you can do everything you can do in Photoshop in GIMP and fairly easily. There's a lot of tutorials on it, but you do need permission to download. But if you're going to be serious about photo editing, this might be the way that you want to go. You can see all of the different options over here. I'm going to cover some of these separately, but there's lassoing, which means like I could cut the cat out of the picture, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Get rid of this space and then make it a PNG. So I can start manipulating my cat a little bit further than what I did. Again, I can change the coloring, the context, all of that stuff, and I can start to add layers to my image. And layering allows you to change different things different ways. So maybe I have the cat, and then I have a second layer, that's the dog, but the dog was taken in a different lighting, so I can lighten the dog up or darken the dog to make them sort of the same. Or I can make the dog look like giant or the cat look giant or something like that. But the images would be treated as different parts of the whole. I see Kristen's typing a question, so I want to. Yep, for open source software, it's amazing. Kristen's saying GIMP, she used it for years. And I actually have both on my computer, and I do go back and forth between the two. This is Adobe Photoshop, and I know it's not free, but I did want to mention it because TechSoup offers it for $10 a year for libraries. It might be $10 a month, but that's still not that bad of a price. And that's for the entire Adobe suite. So if you are going to be doing a lot of digital stuff, it might be worth the investment, especially if you can justify putting it maybe on a computer that the public can access as well. It has all of those shapes here and things like that. And this is an example. Ryan's saying Photoshop Elements is a much cheaper alternative to Photoshop as well. So it's definitely, I think Elements is maybe like $49, I think, or something like that, and you get the disc, where Photoshop is a cloud-based solution now, so you have to have an ongoing fee. Kristen is saying she uses getpaint.net, which is a free download as well. I forgot about GetPaint. I used that a long time ago. So a couple tips for editing photos, and this, I just kind of put these together. Most of this software that we looked at, both the web-based and the downloads, will do all of these functionalities. The first is the healing brush. The healing brush is your best friend. You can see I have some shadow issues in this picture. So what I can actually do is using healing brush to kind of clean my face up a little bit, get the shadows out of it. If people have little marks and things like that, it's an easy way to it kind of blends it so it takes out those kind of things. And I think I actually used it on this picture before I put it in here to take care of some wrinkle issues in my forehead. Cloning. What cloning does, and this is in GIMP and in Photoshop, is you take a little snap of a picture and then you can paste it someplace else. So for example, in this picture, you can see there's a window with the photographer in there, and it just doesn't work. It creates some confusion. So what I did was use the cloning tool on this side to clone it over here. So I took him out of the photo. So it's a really great way to remove somebody from a photo, remove something in the background that you don't want, and it just duplicates the background here over. So you it takes a little bit of time, but it's an easy way to make the picture look a little more seamless. And if I was more detail oriented doing this, it would look a lot better. So basically in Photoshop, you hold the control, you hold some keys down, and GIMP works the same way. It says this is where I'm taking the image from, and then it kind of brushes it over here. The cloning tool is I think in GIMP and in Photoshop. I don't think it's in Photo. Let me double check though. It's also in Elements. Now you did see this in Photo and Photoshop and GIMP, but this is the lasso and the eraser. The eraser can help you just take out the background, and it's in Elements as well. So for example, this photo, I just took the whole background out of myself, and then I can use a lasso, capture just myself, or save it as a PNG, and then I can start to put myself in every situation that you can imagine. I could have lunch with the Queen, I can hang out with my new boyfriend Hugh Jackman, whatever that I need to do. And this is what you see a lot of the memes and stuff on Facebook kind of go nuts and things like that with. So it can be a lot of fun, and it can create some fun in your social media. The layering, and we talked about this, all of the sites that we looked at do layering. Layering takes images, and you can see this is Photoshop because that's what I had open, but all of them will work. And what it means is you can, in Elements, it works on all of these, you can do different things to the different layers. So I don't think you guys can see this, but we were playing around. We added a layer and then made it transparent so we could put a ghost in the back to freak the kids out, which of course it didn't. Yep, Alicia is saying, and that works for all of them as well. You can actually remember your history layers and to undo if you get too carried away with the cloning tool. I have, and with any of these tools, if you lasso the wrong thing, if you do any of that, all of these sort of have an undo, so you can go through your history and go back if you kind of erase too much, you erase somebody's head, you do things like that, you just got carried away. In those kind of situations. So that's just some basic editing. All of these things, especially the ones online, I would say try, play with. You'll find different tools, and all of these tools can be a little frustrating, so practice goes a long way. The cloning tool, it can be a little clunky. The first times I use it, because I would just go too fast, I would clone someone's head and their head would be repeated 16 times across the picture instead of the background. So the trick to all of these is to do small finite motions. So when you do have to go back because you did something wrong, you don't have to start all over. If you just click and drag and you keep going and you're erasing the whole picture without making it separate actions, if you make one little mistake, you're going to have to start all over. So what I find is the best practice for all of these softwares is to do small incremental changes. And that way, when I mess up, I only have to go back a tiny step. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. Perfect. So let's talk about some more places that we can have some fun creating visual marketing ads. My favorite is Canva. How many of you have used Canva before? I bet there's a bunch of you, so I just want to kind of check this out first before we go. All the time, Sarah says, exactly. Canva it's just amazing. So basically, people create these templates, and you can come in and you can customize them. They have they have photography, they have stuff in the background already, but you can upload your own images. So I don't have too much of a demo of it, but basically you would click on this image. I'm hovering again like you can see. So I'm going to click on this image. I can hit edit, and I can just start changing it. I can add the words to it. In 5 seconds, you can have this beautiful, the library's closed for Thanksgiving with a little turkey in front of it and stuff like that. Within seconds, you can have this very visual, creative thing. Easy to use. Now, they have a nonprofit rate, which gives you the pro rate, the pro version, which is hugely, has a lot more stock photos and things like that within it. However, I read recently that they're kind of cracking down on schools and universities getting the nonprofit rate. I didn't hear that about public libraries, so I don't know if that's true. But I know, like, we just applied for it using our Friends group. So, because our Friends group is a 508c. So it's something to investigate. I can't say it's guaranteed, but if you use this, it's worth trying. It's just remarkably powerful. You'll have so much fun. You'll be creating graphics for everything. And one of the things you'll notice, the overarching trend today is getting away from posting words on social media. These visual ads aren't going to take you a lot more time, and they're going to have much more of a footprint. You'll be able to use them for different things. You'll be able to get more interactions out of your users on social media. And so if you're going to be posting, you might as well make it effective. The next one is Placeit. This is a little bit different, but it creates these ads. And what I like about it is you pull up the stock image, and it says, give me the URL. So I put in Swiftland. And all of the marketing materials now have Swiftland's website inside the marketing. I love this for Overdrive because I have a hard time marketing with Overdrive because, I mean, it's hard to show people reading computers and stuff like that, so for flyers and stuff. So you can put little Overdrive pictures in there and things like that. It's simple and effective. I don't know if that comment was about the first one or the second one, but it goes for both. The one thing I would say about Placeit is the images are not large. They're made for social media. They are not good for printing unless you want to buy one. And again, if it's something big and it's a big campaign, I think they charge $8 for the large image. So it might be worth it. Just something to consider. The next thing I'm going to talk about, does anybody have any questions about either one of those sites? Is how to create some free videos, again, with little cinematographer skill. Of course, we can record our own videos on our phones, and I encourage you to do that. Things like Instagram stories and Facebook Live are all very powerful. And they are really good at capturing a live event, but I wanted the same things we kind of talked about earlier. Plan. Think about what you're going to say. Whether you script it out completely, but just have a really good idea of what you're going to say, what you're hoping to capture, and things like that. There's nothing worse than one of those videos where it looks like the person's just wandering around a program with no purpose. So you want people to engage in those. You need to make them good because you really have one shot with these things or two shots. If I look at your video and it's not interesting, am I going to click on it the next time to watch it? Maybe, maybe not. So you want to think through what you're showing on those live videos. So beyond that, there's a couple that you can use to create a video. Adobe Spark will allow you to slide in either a video or pictures, and then you can record audio over it. You can add music, you can add captions. One of the neat things about Adobe Spark, and this is free, this is not a charged product from Adobe, is each slide, so I put the kit up, I record the message that goes with that slide. I go to the next slide, I create the next one. So I can go back and just remove one slide. I don't have to redo my entire audio for it. But again, those short little videos that you see on Facebook, this is what can be used for effectively. The next one is Lumen 5. Lumen 5 is a little bit different, and it's really a neat idea. What Lumen 5 does is it takes your content from your blog and makes videos out of it. Just like that. Or your PowerPoint. So I can upload my PowerPoint. I can upload the content. I can give it the URL for my blog. and it will take it and break it into slides. You have to clean it up a little bit, of course, and you can publish it. Just like that. You don't have to do two things. It will actually take it and create your video post from your blog. So free, exactly, free. They do have some paid stuff, and it does more fancy stuff with the paid, but for free. One of the things I found with a lot of these video editors is that I would get through the whole thing. I would spend hours creating my video, and then they would tell me if I wanted to download it or I wanted to use it in some way, I had to pay a fee, and it was like, that would just wasted my time. It's one thing to just tell me up front. So this one, yeah, exactly. Amy says subtle Lumen 5 icon in credits, and it really is subtle. So highly worth it. So those are really the two best places if you're going to make your own without getting into cost. Those little tutorial videos you see on Facebook where people are typing and the words appear. Some best practices for those before we get too far. One is make sure everything you say is also written or some version of it, because a lot of people do social media without sound. So you want your video to have, people need to understand what your video is without sound if you're sharing it on social media. Does that make sense? The other thing is to keep it short. It doesn't need to be long. Average videos, we say 2 to 5 minutes, but I would say I would even aim for a shorter amount of time with these. Any questions about these sources? Any other source that you kind of want to talk about before we move forward? All right, so overall best practices that we want to consider. When you're offered a download, go ahead and download the largest file size you can. You can never go back up, so it's best to start at the highest and then work down. So then you can scale, then you can do anything. Yep, Alicia is saying, amen, larger size files are the best. So really just, if it's free, it's not costing you any more to download the large image, go ahead and do that. When you look at putting them on your website, you want to keep them under 100K or at least close to it. You probably, if you're compressing your image, won't see that much of a difference on your website in doing that. Adjust the size when you're doing that. Print, I would keep high quality files for my printing, especially if I'm printing flyers within my library. I want it to look good. Social media will do all of the optimizing for you, so don't even worry about it. But go ahead and do that. And if you think, how do I optimize? There's a couple free sites and I think get smushed. I forgot to put that in there. Focus on your message. Your overall message is what is important. That's the whole reason we're doing anything today. Make sure that the photo fits what you're saying. The photo shouldn't be a distraction. It should augment your message and help bring the message home. If it's a program, if it's whatever it is, make sure it's fitting to the image. And these are good examples. I just kind of wanted to throw some images out there. Each image, in your mind, you already made a story about those kids, didn't you? I did when I looked at that, especially the little girl with her hand on her head. So make sure that image is going to go along with what I'm trying to say. That would not be a horrible image for my Storytime program, because it would look like that I was a horrible storyteller. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. We don't know. But while the other image does show some interaction and that the kids have computers available and things like that. So you do want to think about what the image is showing, how the image is cropped, how it's kind of bringing forward your message. Stay relevant. This is one of my, National Cookie Day. Actually, I just found a website, but you guys all have Chase Calendar probably, so you don't need it. But there's all of these holidays, and it is so great to get involved as a library. to celebrate all of these silly holidays. National Cookie Day, I thought this was a great way to bring it in. This is actually a book, so it's not photo edited in any way, but using all of these tools, using Canva, using all of this stuff to bring in these silly holidays. You know, there's National Waffle Day, Donut Day. You can tell I'm hungry. All of that stuff, but I'm still bringing it back to why they should care with the library. You don't want to be completely irrelevant. It's always good. Your words, your tone, they matter. Everything brings together a coherent message. So let's think about this just a little bit. So of course your words matter, we know that, and your colors matter. There's tons of psychology studies about blue showing trust, green is sort of a nurturing color, red gets attention, all of those things. So you want to think about what colors you're using for your programs. And make sure that they sort of blend together and that the colors go together. There's sites like Color Palette that will help you match your colors if you're not naturally inclined to be able to do that well. Pink, red, and purple get the most shares on social media. So just another thing to think about as you're creating your, putting everything together. And remember that site we talked about long ago, you can actually bring in the colors. So you can look for purple images that have purple in them and things like that. You want to think about your hashtags, especially with Instagram and Twitter, to make sure that you're hitting your kind of reaching out of your immediate audience to get some more people. So you want to make them count. And your fonts, oh sure, it's pink, red, and purple get the most shares. But you overall want to make sure the colors kind of blend with your overall library's color scheme, or at least match it. Fonts matter. If you look at these fonts, we could probably go through them all together and sort of throw out which ones mean what to you. But you can tell the difference between, for example, this is probably much more of a kids program. This is going to be much more of a computery kind of program. These are going to be more adult programs. You want to kind of go through that. You want to make sure it's readable. That is one of the things that's really hard when you get into these funkier fonts, is to make sure that they're very clear. Some of them are only good for headers because they need to be giant to be readable. The other thing is to look carefully. This one actually, I don't know what's wrong with the font, but I had to type 2 E's to make it, or 2 A's to make it spell correctly. The A disappeared. And now you're saying, how did she do that? Because we moved computers. This is actually a JPEG of the fonts because I didn't want the fonts to change. We talked about that earlier, that fonts are not movable. They do not go from computer to computer. And what happens is the other computer will try and read your font. So if you want that font to stay and you want it to be readable, you need to save it, your document, as a JPEG, PNG, GIF, anything like that, into a photo or a PDF. But then it makes it uneditable. It becomes a viewable only document. And all of these fonts I got through Font Squirrel or through Creative Market. I can't go through this enough, but pick quality for your project. You cannot take back a bad photo. A bad photo is not worth having a photo. It's actually, I decided at the last minute I didn't like the photo I chose for this one. A bad photo is distracting. It will take away from your message. You want to make sure that it is something that really will bring the impact. And the same goes for your font as well. Margaret was saying, I was told in marketing class I took a large bodies of text need serifs for readability. And Margaret, it's true, and it's also very debatable now with computers. A lot of people, serifs these are all sans serif. They don't have the little font. Let me go back here and see if I actually have a serif. Yes. So what she's talking about is, do you see the little feet on register today versus register over here? This is serif, because those little feet help the transition between the letters. Sans serif is much cleaner and doesn't have that. You see a lot more sans on the web, but serif is supposed to be more readable, especially in large text blocks. So it's a good thing to consider when you're thinking about stuff. So if you're adding a large body of text to your marketing, you might want to consider a sans serif font. And most importantly with images, have fun. Images are supposed to draw my eye, create excitement, and help bring attention to your overall message. So as you're going through them, take them, stock images for what they're worth, but have some fun and find images that fit and can augment your message in a fun and exciting way. And so I did want to just share a couple more resources, and you can go over these after the session as well. The slideshow, I'll share the link. I'll post this for you guys so you have these to kind of go. This Buffer app has site has about 50 more free image sites that you can go through. And not that any of them are better or worse. I don't think there was any better than what I showed today, but some of them might be compatible. And then these other two are how to choose images that will better reflect, and some really good readable tips within them. So I want to open the floor for questions and also insight from you guys, because I know you're doing just as much marketing as I am on some of this stuff. Is there a tip that I missed or a resource that you wanted to point out? I see some questions coming in, so I'll give everyone a second. And I know at least one of you is an artist here, so I know that you have a lot of insight on this, so I'm going to let you type. Ryan says, I'm going to recommend this webinar to a lot of my coworkers. I wish I'd seen it a year ago. Thanks. Oh, thank you, Ryan. That means a lot to me. So I will go ahead and put this up here. This is my contact information. And that last, the last slide again, sure. Sarah, I'm glad you joined us. Thank you. Thank you, Adicia. Thank you, Joan. So again, the slides will be available on SlideShare a little bit later today. I'm going to go through and make sure I added some of these sites that you guys mentioned into this additional resource slide before I post it, so that you'll have everything that was covered today. And I hope you guys found this session useful. And Margaret says, I saw where you said that you can find stylistically linked icons so the images are consistent. Can you recommend a website that allows you to search for clip art that uses the same style of art? Margaret, not particularly. The only place I really use for clip art is openclipart.org, which is open source clip art, and it's not that robust. What I would do is actually look at some of the icons. They have a lot of icons that don't have circles around them, so you can kind of use them as clip art in some ways, especially with the larger sizes. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to go to that last slide again so you can get the slide for the URL for the slides. That's slideshare.net. It was flat icon. And it has an attribution requirement unless you purchase. Well, thank you, Alice. Thank you, everyone. Erin, that question is for you. When will the webinar up?
So immediately following, I will go ahead and edit the webinar, so you will have a link to the recording by the end of the day. All right. Well, you're welcome to stay on if anyone has other questions. Brenda, you will get the presentation, so the links will be active on that.
And I will add all the links from the presentation that you guys shared into that last slide for additional resources, so that everybody has those, that you don't lose any of those great sites that we mentioned.
All right. If you request a certificate, you will be sent that along with the recording link. If you did not request them, but if I see that you want one now, I will go ahead and take care of that for you as well. And if anyone else does not receive a certificate when they send out the link, feel free to email me back and I will get your certificate. It is not too late. Okay, great. All right. I'm just going to wrap up the recording real quick, and you're welcome to keep asking questions, and I'll be on. And I'm sure Diana wouldn't mind staying on as well if needed.
I will stay on as long as there's questions.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Diana, for a wonderful webinar. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, please join us here at the Swifflin office on December 14th, where Diana will be presenting 2 half-day workshops. The morning session will be Train the Trainer, Tips for Teaching Windows 10 to Users, and the afternoon will be Train the Trainer, How Not to Be Hacked, Keeping You and Your Patrons Safe in the Digital World. Also, I'd like to have you look in the future to May 16th, which is Swifflin's Library Staff Day, and where Diana Silvera will be presenting a couple sessions as well. So, thank you everyone for attending, and please keep an eye on the Swifflin website and our continuing education calendar, as well as the Swifflin Facebook page, Twitter feed, or look for your message from the various library listservs that we advertise to. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a terrific rest of your day.